So we have one of the instances in the gospel of Jesus raising someone from the dead. And I was thinking about this gospel this morning and a reflection on the Pietà, the Mary holding Jesus. And the question was, did Mary not know that Jesus would rise? And the idea is that, yes, Mary knew that Jesus would rise. Well, then she didn't really grieve. Well, no, that's not true. Of course Mary grieved. And I think about this little girl who rose from the dead and that she's not still alive. Eventually she died. And I think about Lazarus, right? I visited the tomb of Lazarus. And Jesus rose, called Lazarus out of the tomb, but there's another tomb somewhere over there that Lazarus is still in. And so the point of the gospel today is not that people don't die or that people don't have serious afflictions that continue. It's just part of the point is that yes, there are miraculous healings, and and I have even experienced that in a limited way in my own life. But there's two things happening in the gospel today that kind of transcend the miracles that are kind of given us as evidence. And that is that a woman who was hemorrhaging was ritually impure. She was unclean. She could not go to the temple. She could not go to the temple area. She could not worship. She was unclean, kind of like a leper, not to the same degree, but in a sense. And if you touched a woman who was menstruating or had a flow of blood, then you were unclean. So when this woman touches Jesus, the way the flow of energy goes is Jesus would become unclean. But that's not what happened, right? She became clean. And to touch a dead body. Now, when Jesus was first called, the girl was alive. This scenario unfolds, and now she has died. Now, he could have gone in there while she was still living and touched her, and he would not have become unclean ritually. But he touched her. She was dead. The euphemism for dead is sleeping. She's only sleeping. Well, in a sense, we're all only sleeping because we believe, just as Mary did about Jesus, right, that he would rise. But here she is dead, and Jesus touches her. And does Jesus become unclean after touching a dead body? Is that what happens? No. She is awakened. And that's the kind of theological point of the gospel, is that Jesus comes to overcome the uncleanliness of sin. Because both of these conditions, death and hemorrhaging, were both kind of understood in the Jewish mind as the result of sin and somehow kind of contaminating to everybody in their orbit. So our Lord comes to take on death and disease and to give us new life. That's what's happening in these two miracles that are kind of strangely mushed together. Jesus touches us that we might be made whole. When's the next time Jesus is going to touch you? The Holy Eucharist. When's the next time Jesus is going to touch you? Perhaps in the sacrament of reconciliation. Jesus' purity is greater than our sin. And it is our faith. Do not be afraid, just have faith. It is our faith that we will rise. One more tiny little very quick point is when this woman, after she realized that she had been healed, she came before Jesus in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And I think that kind of idea of bearing our soul before Jesus, we need to do that. Regardless, we have to get into the habit of opening our heart and mind up to Jesus as if he knows what's in our heart and mind. And when we open our heart and mind to Jesus, when we tell him the whole truth, there is another healing that takes place. So the gospel is about the power of Jesus's purity and life being stronger than the impurity of the menstruating woman and the impurity of the deaf girl. May Jesus touch and purify us today as we open our heart to him in the wholeness of the truth.